Robert Wilson, and I'm going to show you how to make primitive pots in a primitive way. In the first part of the video I will show you how to do the molded method, which is digging a small hole in the ground, placing the mud in it or the clay in it, and just molding it, just molding that clay in the hole you made, letting it dry a little bit, taking it out, let it slowly dry a little bit more, and just smoothing it off, fixing it up, making it look nice. Now when it comes to making primitive pots, or making primitive pots in a more in a survival situation, or just want to get out and do it and not have to worry about processing clay or buying nice clay, that's what this first part of the video is more about. All the clay I'm using is from this back pond back here. It's not processed. I scoop it out of the ground, I put it in a ball, and I use it. I don't process it like I did in any of my other earlier videos. Now in the first part of this video we'll be making primitive pots. I'm not trying to make real nice primitive pots. I'm just trying to make functional pots. And so I won't be processing the clay, and I won't be making these pots in a coil method. I'm going to be pulling the clay right out of the ground and be using it. In my earlier videos I did talk about how to find clay to use, and one of the spots I showed you was a little pond. And this is the pond I'll be using. As you can see, I've been already been pulling some clay out last few days. So now we've found a spot to pull our clay out of. We have our resource here. We're going to want to make the pots real close to where we're getting our clay, especially if we don't have any tools we're using, in which this case we don't. So now we need to find a spot to make the clay. For this example, we're going to be doing molded pots. So I'll find an area in the ground that's dry that I could dig a small hole in. Of course, we don't want to be traveled. This looks like a pretty good spot. I mean, there is a lot of clay in this ground, but we want a spot that's dry. Right here is pretty good. So here's our little spot right here. With some kind of digging stick. This hole doesn't have to be real big. We're going to clear it off here. Just loosen up this dirt here just enough so we could. Now usually when someone thinks about molding a pot, they think about putting the clay on the outside of another bowl or something. That's fine if you have a way to put a medium between the clay and the object you're molding it against, because that clay is going to stick to what you're molding it to, and as it dries, as I was talking about earlier, the clay is going to shrink and it's going to crack. And it's going to stick, and you're going to get very frustrated when you try to pull it off and you can't pull it off and it breaks up in your hand. But this way, when it shrinks a little bit, it won't stick to the mold. It will actually kind of pull away from it a little bit, making it easier to pull out. Not to mention the sand itself that sticks to the clay will just come off with the clay. So look, alright, so we have a basic mold, basic mold here. We just kind of brush out all the loose dirt here and kind of pat it down a little bit. And there we go. So now I'm going to go out and collect some of that clay from out over there and we'll put it in here. Alright. Here's our clay. No, I'm not doing much here. Just pulling it right out of the ground. And you're going to want a nice big ball of it. As you're pulling it out, make sure you look for larger rocks, pebbles, and just try and clean it out as you're adding it, because there's going to be junk in there. But it will work in the end. Alright. Nice big bit of clay here. Let's go and stick it in the mold. So what we're going to do is push down in here. Take your time. Make it nice and even. Here we got extra clay here, that's good. Right here. Nothing fancy, it just has to be good enough right now. We'll fix it up a little bit later when it dries a little bit. There we go. Well, you're not going to be able to get real nice in here anyways. But we are. Right now, this is good enough. It's not perfect by any means. It still needs some work on it. But before we work more on it, we're going to let it dry. And after it dries, we'll take it out. After it dries a little bit more, or it's a little bit harder, we'll take it out, we'll wet it some more, add a little bit more clay in the areas that is, add a little bit more clay in the areas that are weak or thinner. Take a little bit of clay off by sanding it down with the rock with the thicker areas. If we want to build higher walls here, we can wet the lip here and add some clay on it, and it'll be sturdier since it'll be dry, or drier. I keep saying dry, it's drier. But right now, this would probably hold about a cup. And I'll show you some other ones I got going. Here's 3 more. Now the one that you're going to see me working on in the video is one of the first ones I did in this area. And it'll be coming out of this hole right here. But that's how you start it. And next, I'll show you how you finish it. So we have this guy right here. thought about pulling it out, but I don't think it's ready yet. On the top part it's hard, but on the inside it's still pretty soft. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on the rim right here and just kind of smooth it out a little bit. Bind it together a little bit better. Start cracking. Now what you can do, if you don't have the means to set it out and dry it slowly, maybe just real hot and dry, and it just cracks every time you set it out to dry, you can always try and cover it with something damp, and that will help to slow the drying process. Usually when I work on some bowls that doesn't have timber in it, that's what I'll do. I'll take a cloth, make it damp, and I wrap the pot in that damp cloth, and I set that cloth out in the shade to dry, and I'll usually leave it out there. Usually takes a few days, a day or two, to starts drying. If it dries slow enough, it won't crack. And that probably has to do with it drying out evenly. But it's probably thicker than the rim is, allowing the rim to dry out faster than you did on the bottom, so it's cracking that way. I think I might do is just take a little bit more clay. Now, I'm not going to mess with it too much more. I'm going to cover this and let it dry slowly. I could cover it with some pine needles, or I could cover it with some grass or something. Just something to slow down the drying effects. Add a little bit of shade. And we'll come back and check on this in a little bit. See how it's doing. Maybe we'll be able to pull it out of the ground today and set it off to the side and let it dry out tonight. So let's take off our pine needles and just see where our basket is at. Oh, it's actually looking pretty good, actually. Haha, check that out, came right out. Well, now we have another hole where we could put some more clay in to make another pot. What we're going to do with this one, though, it's going to need a little bit more smoothing on the insides, and have to add some clay in some certain spots. Here we go. It's really not looking all that bad. I'm going to put it in the shade and let it dry for the rest of the day into the night. Tomorrow morning we'll start doing some finishing work on it, and we'll smooth this out and round this out more, add some little bit of clay on the inside because there's some little divots in here which are going to be little weak spots. Smooth it out, and we'll do that just by kind of smoothing out, sanding it off with our hands. some water to kind of like even it all out. Take a little bit of clay, just put it on the inside, and adding some water and smoothing it out. We'll go over all this in a little bit for you tomorrow.